Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Start the Week with Spencer. This is our weekly webinar where we take questions from parents with children with special needs from around the world. We encourage parents to join us and ask us their biggest, most important questions. Over the last few weeks, I've had several moms come on as guests. These are moms who have been doing the Doman program for years. And so it gave me the opportunity to ask them questions about their experience, and other moms were able to ask them questions. And I thought that was very helpful. We're going to try something a little different this week. I've asked Haley to join us today. Haley is new to the program, new to the Doman program. I know she's attended these webinars in the past just to watch and observe and ask some questions. And Haley is coming to our clinic in August. She's coming for her first appointment and had some questions leading up to the appointment. So I thought this might be a great opportunity for Haley to ask me questions, and maybe we could have a productive conversation about things she can do with her son even before coming to the clinic. So Haley, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for bringing me on. I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, so Haley, maybe before you jump into your questions, also because I don't know much about your son except for a few things I saw in an email. Do you mind, just to whatever degree you feel comfortable, you just tell us a little bit about him, like what's his age, what are the kind of developmental challenges he's dealing with?
Okay. My son's name is Aiden, and he is 4. When he was 2, he got evaluated, and autism is kind of on the table, but not formally diagnosed. And I'm trying to navigate on whether that's fitting or not.
Got it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Haley, if I could just ask. So what were some of the earliest aspects of his development that you noticed might be delayed?
Language and picky eating became like the star problems.
Yeah. And where do you live?
Colorado.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right. So Aiden is 4. Have you started any aspects of the Doman program already?
No, we have not.
Okay. All right, good.
We're trying to get through the courses that we have access to.
Yeah. So okay, so you're brand new to the program. So yeah, as part of the coming for the appointment, you've gotten access to the Doman Method course. It's like an online course that you take in advance of the appointment. How far have you made it through that course?
Well, we got to the basic understanding of the autism difference from what you guys define it as versus what society defines it as, and it just makes more sense.
Great. Out of it, I know you're supposed to be asking me questions, not the other way around, but do you mind talking about like how your understanding may have changed since watching that about autism specifically?
I think that society just kind of puts a huge point on there's nothing you can do for autism but the speech and occupational therapy, and kind of just waiting for the child to kind of make their own progress, versus the way you guys describe it as, no, there are things that can be done and a path that you can be on that will be more successful than the traditional routes that are being portrayed, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I think that was a great explanation. So yeah. So why don't we jump into your questions? What's the first one you'd like to start with?
So when my son was 2, language, he may have had a few words and that was it. So with food, it would always be a full shutdown, breakdown. He would like hide under the bed if food was involved. So I started teaching him no thank you to get him to sit at the table, which now he does, but now it's no thank you with any food offerings. So I'm trying to figure out how to get out of that.
Okay, so it's very tough to get him to eat, basically.
Yes.
Okay. And are there foods he does like?
Yeah, pretty much anything crunchy, granola type of foods.
Got it. Okay, crunchy foods. Do you have a feeling if his reluctance to eat different foods has to do with texture or taste or both?
Not texture. It's the way it looks is what throws him off.
The way it looks. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Um, Now, listen, in my experience, if he doesn't like the way it looks, that's probably related to some other sensory thing that he's overly sensitive to. So, for example, parents will often tell me, oh, my child only likes to eat foods of this specific color. That's probably because he connects something about the color with either the texture, which is a tactile experience, or having to do with the smell or the taste of that food, if that makes sense. So he tried something that was green color once, and he just assumes all green things taste like that, whether that's
Yeah.
true or not. Okay, so got it. Now I saw in one of the emails that you had sent to me, you sent a video in, and it looked like you were asking him to smell.
Oh, so,
Um,
okay. You guys did get it.
Yeah, I got that video. Yeah. So are you having him smell foods?
No. He he will smell things that I'm cooking and be interested and be excited. He'll sit at the table, and
Okay.
then I'll serve my daughter. He'll see it and it'll be a no. And
Uh-huh.
he'll like run from the table and that'll be it.
Got it. Okay. So listen, I think about three major components when it comes to children who are picky to foods. The first, or maybe I should say actually four components, but let's start with the big ones first. So the most common issue that I find with children who are picky with foods is smell hypersensitivity. Okay. So, like you said, he's very interested in smelling foods. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard me talk about this in the past. Have you heard me talk about smell and how it relates to food pickiness? Or is
Uh,
this new?
this new.
New. Okay, got it. All right. So when we have food inside of our mouths and we're eating, we always think of that as being taste, right? We're tasting the food. But actually, our ability to taste foods with our tongue is actually quite limited. A lot of the enjoyment that we get out of foods comes from our sense of smell. Okay, so
Okay.
in the back of our throats, there's a passage that leads up to our sinuses. So when we have food in our mouths, we are literally smelling the food because the aroma of the food is going up that passageway into the sinuses. So many children who are kind of diagnosed as autistic or who might be on that spectrum, again, I don't put much into those labels. Very often they're hypersensitive to smells. And so when they've got a food in their mouth, they are more sensitive to the smell of that food. And that makes them more likely to sometimes gag on the food or spit it out because the aroma is so much stronger for them. Okay.
Okay.
So the first thing I'd recommend for your son is doing a program of smell stimulation where I would take different foods and have him smell them. Okay. Very Have you ever tried this before?
Yes, it's getting him to understand to breathe through his nose that's kind of the issue that I run into.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I saw a short video where he does like a little yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I do have to say that even if you don't have to necessarily instruct him to do anything, it's just about taking the food and kind of like wafting it under his nose. Okay. Because
Okay.
even if he's breathing both through his mouth and his nose, he'll get some of the aroma through his nose, and he'll likely inhale a bit too. So
Okay.
basically what I would do is before meal times, I'd take three random things out of your fridge and cabinets. Okay. And it's nice to get a variety of things, right? So you could grab maybe a spice out of the spice cabinet. You could grab, it could be a vegetable or a fruit or a piece of meat out of the fridge. Okay.
Okay.
But I recommend picking three things. Okay. And for 5 to 10 seconds each, I would waft it under his nose. Okay. So I would say, here's a lemon. So maybe you cut a lemon in half. you put it under his nose and you go, there's a lemon, like smell the lemon. Okay. It's very good to talk about it as you're letting him do it. Okay.
Okay.
So you can even say, oh, the lemon is sour. Look at it, it's yellow. Because very often just describing things to a child starts to make them feel more comfortable with it. Okay.
Yes.
It makes it more relatable to them, less scary when it's described, right?
Okay.
Rather than this is some mysterious thing, which I don't know if it'll taste good or not, right? Um, and so, yeah, so maybe you do it with a lemon, then maybe you have cilantro. Okay, so you let him, smell the cilantro next for 5 to 10 seconds, and then maybe last but not least, have a piece of grilled chicken that you have in the fridge. You let him
Okay.
smell it. Okay, so you do 3 different smells in the session. Okay, and what we're really going for here is just giving him this sense of he gets to smell different things, but it's also about giving him a gradual approach. But we're not like force feeding him it, but we're saying this is not something that's dangerous. Like smell it, feel comfortable with it. And this alone, often, when you do this over time, children's palates will start to expand. They start to show more willingness to try things. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Now, Haley, maybe after doing this for a week of smells, okay, I would start to, if he'll allow it, pair a tiny taste with the smell. Okay. So now what you're doing is you're saying, okay, you're cutting that, let's say you've cut that orange in half and you're letting him smell it. And you say, hey, bud, here's just a little taste. And can I put a little bit on your tongue? Okay.
Okay.
The whole idea here is you're trying to do such a little bit that it's not threatening in any way, right? But we're trying to link the smell with his taste. Okay.
Okay.
And hopefully he goes, yeah, okay, what's the big deal? It's just a tiny little taste on my tongue, So it's important, whatever you're thinking about giving to him, do half of that, like make it so tiny, it's not threatening. All
Okay.
right.
Are
So
you
now,
talking?
yeah,
Go ahead. Are you talking about singular ingredient items like a lemon, not like spaghetti,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I'm talking
Okay.
about single ingredient items. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I said that
Um,
wrong.
yeah. So for example, I mean, if you take the spaghetti example, right, you could have the pasta itself, but then there's also usually a sauce that goes with it, So
Okay.
you just take one ingredient of those things.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So I do that 3 times a day, and you do 3 smell and tastes in each session. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the kind of smell taste component that I would get started with if I were you.
Okay.
Um, the next thing that I like to add, which is a bit more of a behavioral thing, but it can kind of get kids, it makes it into a game, is the whole idea of like we try one new thing every day. So I'll have parents write out like imagine like a month calendar. And on that calendar, you have, each day, one new food we're going to try, And so when you start out that day, you could even say, hey, Aiden, look, today's food of the day is orange, and maybe the next day it's pineapple. And the next day after that, it's, turkey. But for some children, this kind of gamifies it a little bit of like, oh, it's one new thing, like what's the big
Yeah.
deal? And they get to check it off when they complete it. So, I've even had parents do 100 new foods in 100 new days. And
Okay.
if you can imagine, like if a child tries 100 new foods in 100 days, they'll eat just about anything at that point,
Okay.
So these are gradual approaches where we're trying to stimulate his senses, which is a big reason why he's hypersensitive, right? He's hypersensitive. That's why he's picky. It's not just a behavioral thing. It's not him being bad. He's the smell and taste is stronger for him. So we're doing a sensory stimulation with him approach, but at the same time, we're just trying to get him to take one little step at a time toward being more open.
Okay. I do take him grocery shopping with me as much as I can. and I will allow him to kind of pick out whatever he wants, and I will buy it and support whatever he thinks he's going to try. Yesterday he picked out a tomato and
Okay.
he held it and he hyper fixates on it, and like that became like his special item. And
Okay.
then I can't get anywhere past that.
When you
Like
say he hyperfixates, does that mean he eats it or he just like wants to play with
he
it?
yeah, he wants to hold it like it's his special item for the day.
Got it. Like as if he was getting a toy from a store or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. And then if you're like, "Hey, let's cut this up and eat it." He's like, "No, no, no, I don't want to."
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, I like your thinking. I like your approach there. It makes sense. Like try to get him into the decision-making process. Um
Yes.
and unfortunately it just seems like he wants to go another way with it. So I don't think that's
Yeah.
your fault. I think it's just, how he's viewing it. But a little bit but I think that one of the things I'd recommend, and you might have heard me talk about this in a past session, is that it's very good to talk about food with children. I don't think adults and parents talk enough about food and describe foods enough for children.
Okay.
And there's been some interesting research that shows food pickiness, for example, in the US is much worse than it is in a country like France. And children in France tend to be much more open to trying things. So there's no question there's a cultural element here, okay? And it turns out in France, parents talk about food to their children all the time. So like when they're sitting down at meals, they will describe the foods. They'll say like, today we're having this, and can you smell how it's, can you smell the aromas? Can you smell how strong it is? Can you, do you taste how sour it is? They'll describe those things. And
Okay.
there's something about the description to the children that puts the children at ease. In other words, it kind of intellectualizes it. Maybe it kind of takes it out of the emotional realm a little bit and more into the intellectual realm. And so those children are just open to trying new things because it's like, oh yeah, we talk about food. It's like a part of our family lifestyle, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I would just recommend talking to him a lot about food. Involving him in the food prep process can be very helpful for kids. Like, hey, we're preparing a salad. Can you come here and just throw these chopped peppers into the salad? Just them like getting hands on with the food itself can make a big difference.
Yes. That's it's funny because my son likes muffins and homemade muffins are pretty much the best for him. But he won't like lick the spoon for batter, even though he knows it's the same thing. And he's a
Uh,
part of the mixing and all that kind of stuff. He still doesn't do it, which
yeah.
is just funny. But
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And listen, some of these things might take time because they've become habits for him now, right?
yes.
But I think that just focus right now on increasing variety, in terms of getting him to smell and taste different things. And by the way, we just I hope you don't mind, Haley. We did get a question from another parent about why it's important to smell the food. I explained earlier that the sense of smell is actually essential for our experience with food. It's actually 70 to 80% of the experience when food is in our mouth is actually smell, not taste. So, so yeah, smell is absolutely essential, and it's common that children are overly sensitive to smells, and that's why they're picky. Haley, what do you have another question?
Yes. I and this might be something that we do at the evaluation, but I am starting to get concerned about his height. And I'm wondering what you know about stunted growth and things of that nature with the AFRID diagnosis.
Hmm. And sorry, with what diagnosis?
Julie and I have been talking about Aiden possibly being AFRID. Is that how you say it?
Could you spell it?
ARFID. Sorry,
ARFID.
I'm dyslexic.
ARFID. Oh, avoidant restricted food intake disorder.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, listen, what I will say here, Haley, and this is the first time I've ever heard of ARFID before, which stands for avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. This is a very common thing which is done with diagnoses where they will take a symptom, right? Or in this case, a kind of behavior, and they make it into a disease. You know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
kind of like
Yes.
this child is avoidant to eating foods. Let's put a diagnosis on it so we can make, my grandfather Glenn used to say that humans are funny. We feel like if we put a name on something, we understand it. So they're like, what is this? Why is this child not eating foods? Let's make a diagnosis, ARFID. Now we understand it. Sorry, there's no cure. That's the kind of
Okay. Okay.
that's how professionals think. Because they think by handing a diagnosis, they're somehow answering a question, which they're often not. So
So do
because
you think?
yeah.
Oh,
No,
do
go
you
ahead.
think it's all linked back to some type of brain injury, and that after doing? No. Okay.
Yes. No,
Oh.
I think that this behavior of being resistant to foods is 100% a, or maybe let me qualify that a little bit, 95% a neurodevelopmental issue. That
Okay.
in Aiden's brain, there are some areas of the brain that are not functioning normally, and that's probably made him more hypersensitive, overly sensitive to smells and tastes. And perhaps also, those when there's a neurodevelopmental issue, it can also impact behavior a bit. It could make a child, more resistant to trying new things. Okay. So when you combine all of that, it leads to this reluctance to try new foods. But that is almost entirely a neurodevelopmental issue. These are symptoms. And yeah, sure, there's a cultural element. Like I saw one mom on Instagram say that she's found in Africa, children are more willing to try things than they are in the West. So there's definitely, like I said, with France, there's a cultural element depending on how we raise kids. I think also in the US, like kids are just inundated with media constantly of like, these are good foods to eat, so they think because they see on TV burgers all the time, they think, oh, that's what good food is. So there is a cultural element to this, but I think in Aiden's case, it's a neurodevelopmental issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the ARFID diagnosis, again, I'm just seeing this for the first time, but by the way, I mean, so have you been given any recommendations for that diagnosis?
No, but it makes me more concerned about, I guess, pushing his boundaries with food, because I don't want to make things worse with the stuff that he already eats,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Understood. Yeah. And especially when you connect that with the concerns about weight and, development, I think for
Yeah.
many parents, understandably, one of making sure their child eats kind of goes to the root of parenting, right? If you think about it, it's one of the basic responsibilities of a parent. And so when a child rejects food or resists it, especially and the child's not eating a lot, that's scary, and understandably so. So and I think we have to acknowledge that. And so it's important, Haley, to take an approach which is slow and is at a gradient, if that makes sense. So when I say
Yeah.
gradient, I mean think about improvement, but like slightly over time. Because yeah, I think if you went in tomorrow and you were like, Aiden, we're going to try 10 new foods today and you're going to eat it right now. Yeah, I mean, he might shut down and say like, I'm not going to try anything new, and you might be worse off the next day than you were before.
Yeah.
But if you take like a gradual approach where we're just going to start with smelling the foods, you're not even eating them, just smell them, and then it's like, all right, now we're going to give you the tiniest taste. It's almost ridiculous how little we're giving you. It's almost like a joke, and many kids find it kind of funny. And then we're going to work up to you trying maybe one new food a day. How about that? Yeah,
Okay.
for many kids, they're comfortable with taking those steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Usually, okay, so right now he's starting to not be able to sustain himself on the snacks and the foods that he's willing to eat. So then he ends up hangry, and then I'm pretty much lost of like, okay, how do I get out of this without like him eating a million granola bars a day?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. And listen, since you're coming to our clinic in August, right? So you've got, let's see, June, July, you've got 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And when you come for that appointment in August, of course, we'll give you recommendations on how to increase variety in his foods, but we'll also probably tell you here are certain foods we'd rather you not give him, right?
Yeah. Milk being one
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're on the right track. But what I would say for you right now is your focus should just be variety, not cutting foods out. Because, uh, like you said, he has a very limited diet. So if you go in tomorrow and you're like, we're not doing any more granola bars, he may have nothing to eat, right? So
Yeah.
that's why, and by the way, this is probably one of the most common concerns. I know Colleen tells me one of the most common concerns from new parents when they come onto our program is, oh no, my child only eats three things, and I'm going to go to Doman International, and they're going to tell me that they can't eat those three things anymore, and and so that's why in the beginning with a child like Aiden, we have to focus on variety. And so I think you should try to take advantage of these next 3 months of like, let's just try to like do the smell and taste stimulation,
Okay.
just have him taste new foods and see if we can broaden that. And then when we get him eating more foods, more of those single ingredient foods, then we can start to say, all right, what are the things we want to cut out here? Okay.
Okay.
And I think also, Haley, even if we look at the spectrum of granola bars, for example, will he eat almost any granola bar, or does it have to be like a specific brand?
He's pretty flexible with granola bars.
Okay, got it. So, even when you look at granola bars, right, I'm just using it as an example here, there's a wide spectrum of how healthy they are, right?
Yes. I did get
And
him. Go ahead. Sorry.
no,
I
no,
got
so
him to switch from the junky ones to a better, lesser ingredient whole food one, if that makes
one,
sense.
yeah, for sure. And one of the best, which let's say simple recommendations, right? If I was meeting a parent for the first time and I could only tell them like one sentence of a nutritional recommendation for their child, right? It's like, Spencer, you can tell them one thing and that's it. I would say read through the ingredients on the packaging. And if there's something on there that you can't pronounce or you've never heard of before, avoid it, So,
Yeah.
it's a very simple thing, but when you look at an ingredients list and or another way to think about it is, would your great grandmother have eaten that? And if
Yeah.
the answer is no, like high fructose corn syrup, okay, let's avoid that because great grandmother didn't eat that. It was never put on the table for her. So yeah, that I would start with that because at least that way, if he's getting packaged foods, processed foods, you're still picking out foods that are of, let's say, better quality, than
Okay.
others.
How do you feel about meal replacements?
Tell me about that. What's the
Um,
meal replacement?
so my son currently drinks what we call a chocolate milk, which is a breakfast essentials meal replacement with vitamins and whatnots in it. But it's more than just like chocolate syrup and milk. You know what I mean?
But by the way, Haley, I realize because we've ventured into the topic of nutrition, it's important for me to say I'm not a nutritionist, and tell all the parents, consult with your doctor, all of that stuff, before you
Okay.
make changes. But how do I feel generally about that? Um, yeah, we tend to avoid them because those tend to be those, like, let's say drinks or shakes tend to be very sugary. tend to have all kinds of, sometimes they might have dyes in them. They tend to have, a lot of artificial ingredients. And by the way, I mean, one of the most common things we have is children will often join our program on formulas, and we'll have to get them off of the formula because again, they're packed with sugar, and get them drinking maybe nut or seed milks, right, that are healthier. So
Okay.
yeah, I wouldn't. Again, like, I've never met your son before, but I would take a whole foods approach over a liquid, especially in his case where he can eat them.
Okay.
By the way, are you going to those just because he likes them so much, or as a way to get in more calories, or both?
Both.
Hmm.
Um, I I don't know if I should just keep him fed until we do the program and just take the breastfeeding route of fed is best, or if I should. And you recommended doing the smell test, so I think I'm going to work on that until we come and go from there when we get there. Is kind of my
Yeah,
thought.
I think that's the best way to go about this. Just focus right now on increasing variety. Okay. And listen, because it's 3 months, and I know you're in touch with my colleague Julie, let's say in the next month his variety really increases a lot. And by the way, sometimes those kind of breakthroughs come faster than parents think. Where the child, I recently had a parent reach out to me and they were like, "Wow, in a couple of weeks, my kid is trying everything now," and it's like, great. Julie could help you before the appointment and saying, "Okay, now that he's eating all these things, why don't we try cutting out the chocolate milk?" Like, she'll pick whatever she feels is best and help you. She'll guide you with that process. But yeah, for now, let's just focus on getting her more foods, or sorry,
Okay,
getting him more foods.
that's fine. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Um,
By the way, Haley, just because we do have other parents watching, we have a comment here from Haley, and she said she's just encouraging you. She's to take dairy out. Um, she said, "Advance congratulations on your son's guaranteed improvements." Yeah. So, but again, we'll get there when the time's right.
yeah, I'm confident that you guys are going to be able to help us.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna get there. Yeah, every kid starts on this nutrition journey in a different in a different place. And even though you're in a very tough situation, I've seen tougher situations. If that makes you feel better.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, Haley. Any other questions for me?
Um, no, I don't think so. I mean, like, yes, but they'll be after evaluation and so on from there. But
Perfect.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Bye, Haley.
bye.
All right. Well, listen, we've got a few more minutes, so I'm willing now to open up questions from the audience. But I wanted everyone to have a little bit of a feeling of what it might be like to come to Doman International. Like, these are the kinds of conversations that we have in the offices with parents. And as you can see, it's a two-way street when we're trying to problem solve a child's issues. Like, I need to ask, Haley would ask me a question, and usually before delivering an answer, I have to ask her at least one clarifying question to make sure that I give the best advice possible. Because some kids are truly, children are in different situations. Sometimes there are kids, by the way, who are ready to do maybe something more dramatic, where it's okay, now we're going to start removing some of these foods because he's ready for that. And I think Aiden will be ready for that soon. But other kids, it's just about focusing on one thing in this moment. For some children, our nutritionists might say, we're going to focus on adding certain supplements first to your child's diet because we feel like, according to lab work, he's missing out on certain vitamins and nutrients, and they'll focus their focus there first. So it really does depend on the child. And so that's why we really talk about our work at Doman International as a partnership with parents, because we need parents to give us information, be engaged, because in the end, they're the ones who know their children better than anyone else. Colleen, any additional thoughts you have? I mean, I know you talk to parents a lot on their first calls, and I know that nutrition and diet is often one of the biggest concerns and fears
Yes,
that parents will have.
yes, yes. I really thought that your point about, um, this ARFID diagnosis or whatever, the point about, wanting to put a label on something because it makes us feel like we have greater control or understanding, even when we in fact do not. Um, and I do talk to a lot of parents who have spent a long time, sometimes years, chasing diagnoses, hoping to get the right one, the
Mm.
that key. Um, and usually by the time they find us, they've realized there is no one key for anybody. So like realizing that no, it's really a holistic thing, and that every child is different, and the diagnosis itself, it doesn't come with an attendant solution,
Yeah.
which is really frustrating because you do, as a parent, you're like, if I can just, if somebody breaks their leg, you go to the doctor tells you what kind of fracture it is by doing an x-ray, and then the treatment is clear. Cool, we're done. But with these kinds of, it's like this spider of things all over the place, and my kid has this and my kid has this, and all of their behaviors are different, and sometimes they're different on a Tuesday from a Wednesday. It can be really hard. So I feel like coming back to no, there's no easy fix, but understanding that we can pick apart those symptoms and get to the root cause gives parents confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, let's see. We've got some questions that are coming in here. So Iman is asking about reflux. She says her son has reflux. It does occur frequently. Any recommendations? So, Iman, there are foods that are more likely to cause reflux in children. And obviously, I don't know what your son's diet looks like, but sometimes many of the foods that can cause reflux would be maybe more obvious, like sugary foods. Dairy makes it more likely for children to have reflux. For many children, wheat, gluten. Okay. But also, there are some actually healthy foods, like, for example, broccoli or spinach, that for certain children makes it more likely for them to have reflux. So yeah, so it let me give you a few other recommendations, Iman, that I know our nutritionists often tell families. Sometimes they recommend giving smaller meals, but more frequently throughout the day, because often when children eat big meals, they're more likely to have reflux. They also say it's very important to try to stick to a feeding schedule where you try to feed the child at the same times, around the same times every day. This creates a predictable pattern for the digestive system, and it really helps kids with it can help reduce reflux. And then also, making sure that a child after a meal is sitting up straight, especially for children who might be crawlers or creepers. Some parents will feed them and then put them down on the ground, which we recommend, right? We want children to be mobile and crawl and creep, but sometimes putting them in that prone position after a meal isn't ideal. It's better for them to be upright, sitting, or standing and walking if they do so. So yeah, those are some of the recommendations. Iman, let's see, very healthy, no sugar, no processed, no fried foods. Good for you. Minimum dairy. Yeah. So you might want to look at, I mean, you say minimum dairy, maybe, restricting that, but also, let me just see, I have a list of foods up in front of me. I'm just thinking about healthier foods. So broccoli, cabbage, spinach, starchy foods, right? I guess like potatoes could be an issue. Peanuts. These are some of the foods that I'm, I know our nutritionists sometimes tell parents to look out for. Again, not a nutritionist. Especially if I've never seen a child, I can't say you must do this. I'm just giving kind of general recommendations based on the child's needs. I'm going to guess, Iman, also that your child is not on any kind of formula, because I notice many children who receive formula instead of breastfeeding are more prone to reflux generally. All right. I've got a question here. Can you tell us when it's best to do the smell and taste stimulation for families who need it? So I recommend doing it before mealtime, but that's not so much because I think maybe it helps the child more. I think it could be done any time of day, but I like to do it before meal times because it's easy for parents to remember to do it, because you're already in the kitchen, you're preparing the food. It's like, let me grab 3 different foods out of the cabinets and fridge and let my child smell them. Okay. And maybe it's a nice warm up before mealtime of let's try smell some things, taste some new things, and then eat our meal. So I think it's more just because it works well in the schedule of the family. Iman says no formula, but the smaller portions make sense to me. Okay, good. Yeah, give that a try and let me know how that goes. All right.
Spencer,
Yeah, and by the way, I do want to say, sorry, Colleen, I just wanted to make one comment. For when families come to our clinic, I'm not a nutritionist, right? I teach parents about cognitive development, speech development, sensory development. So my recommendations in nutrition come from hearing our nutritionists teach families, hearing what they recommend. It's not my area of expertise. So I say that, Iman, because if a family comes to our clinic and they have an appointment and they see one of our nutritionists, they're going to get much more in-depth recommendations on these things than I can provide. So I'm limited in that sense. Colleen, sorry, go ahead and
No. I was just going to ask, do we maybe I'm sure you maybe overheard this. Do we recommend limiting liquids along with meals sometimes for kids, like so that you're not drinking a big glass of water along with your food, because then the stomach acids are diluted and maybe you're not digesting as well as you should?
Yeah, we do. And I think my colleague Julie is watching this, and Julie can say like what our general recommendation is for how long before and after a meal we don't we don't provide liquids. Julie's saying, like small sips of water during the meal are okay. And then Julie, do we have a general guideline that we provide now in terms of timing about restricting fluids? Yeah, Julie says 30 minutes before and 45 minutes after the meal. So basically during that period, she's saying sips of water are fine. Sometimes when you're eating, you do want to have a little sip, but trying to minimize the liquids given with a meal. Thank you, Julie. All right, let's see. I'm just seeing on Instagram if we have any questions.
I have one that Les sent us when you have time.
Yeah, go ahead, Colleen.
Okay, so this question is from Neethu. Wants to know, treat ASD child, how to make a 2.5-year-old speak, end behavioral therapy. So it's kind of 3 questions, I guess.
I'm sorry, Colleen, you broke up there for me for the first second. Could you just say the first part of the question again?
Yes. So this question is from Neethu.
Okay.
And they're asking, treat ASD. So I presume that they have a child with a diagnosis
with autism
of autism.
Spectrum disorder.
Yes. Wondering how to make that child who is 2.5 speak, end behavioral therapy.
Well, let me start with the behavioral therapy part. I did a whole, the first webinar that we did this year on Start the Week with Spencer's, maybe January 3rd, around that. If you want to go back on our Instagram or Facebook feed, you'll find it. I had my colleague Jordan Ernest on, who's trained in ABA, and we talked about it. And we did not give it a positive grade. Let me just say that. We don't incorporate ABA into the Doman method. It's very stressful for most children. And children with autism, with that diagnosis, are far more sensitive to experiences that might be fearful or stressful to them. Okay. All children, of course, all humans, of course, are sensitive to these things, but children with that diagnosis are even more sensitive. And so you have to be very careful about the activities you're providing them to do, and making sure that they are comfortable doing them. And that's why when we teach parents about our programs, we remind them that it's important to do it in a joyous way. And if the child is very upset, very stressed, it's probably better to stop it, put it away for a little while. We don't use ABA, and there are actually some very negative consequences that I've seen with children from it. And I find that results tend to be minimal at best. In terms of speech, there's a lot we can do in terms of speech development. And I don't really have the time maybe to go into it now, but I'd be happy to make one of my next sessions more speech focused, because I think that's such an important topic. What I will recommend to Neetu, because this is like homework, is in both of our books, we've got the book called The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. We've also got another book, I'm not sure, it can be seen right there, called Answering Autism. This is a book you can find on Amazon. It's available in hard copy, ebook, and also audiobook. So any format you could ever want. There's a chapter on speech development and communication in that book. So I highly recommend you get the book, Neetu. Okay. And also I'd recommend, Colleen, have you ever spoken to Neetu before? Do you recognize the name? No. I would definitely recommend, Neetu, you jump on a call with Colleen as well. Yeah.
I'm going to reach out. I have the email address. So
great. Okay. Thanks, Colleen. Did we get any other pre-submitted questions, Colleen?
Well, actually, last week we ran out of time because we had that fantastic session with Geraldine. We did get a question, a few questions from Virginia. Now, Virginia and I have been in contact. Her son has also an autism diagnosis. She wants to know, what does she need to do to increase oxygen levels in his brain? She wants to know how to help him gain more speech. She wants to help him reduce his low concentration span and hyperactivity. It seems that speech, hyperactivity, and really increasing oxygen to the brain are her biggest concerns for him.
Yeah, I mean, similar to my recommendation for Neetu, I definitely recommend our books. I definitely recommend you talk to Colleen. So I'll say that quickly. In terms of, so she said speech, hyperactivity, and there was a third one.
And just getting more oxygen to the brain.
Oh, oxygen to the brain. Yeah. So, the Doman method is a holistic approach. And so we have a part of the program, which is called the Doman Oxygenation Program, which is an activity that, requires a special mask that increases oxygen delivery to the brain and to the vital organs of the body. And it does that through carbon dioxide, which is something called a vasodilator. So when you breathe carbon dioxide, and I'm talking about very brief sessions, very short, it enlarges the blood vessels. And when that happens, more blood travels to the brain, and it carries oxygen with it. Oxygen is the food of the brain, and it helps the brain function better. So often we find that children become better focused, less hyperactive, They often have better balance and coordination and better speech after we start the oxygenation program. It's one of the oldest programs that we do. I think it's going now on 70 years in use. So started by my grandfather. I also want to say every child on the program who does this protocol is approved by a physician. This is not something that we just hand out. A doctor needs to say that this activity is safe for this child. And unless a child has a heart or a lung contraindication, most children are able to do it. But if a child has a heart issue or lung issue, we sometimes can't do it. But even for those children, we do have other programs that can also help. So I would say, in terms of how can you increase oxygenation? Well, the Doman oxygenation program for sure, but also aerobic physical activity is a great way to do it. So, if a child's able to walk, for example, if you get them running even short distances at a kind of minimal speed, like jogging, it increases oxygen delivery to the brain. And also, by the way, I have to say, it also releases all kinds of good chemicals, in the brain that, for example, can help reduce hyperactivity. So a lot of parents say that along with that, something like aerobic running, they can decrease hyperactivity. And as I said, I recommend reading the Doman books, and please join another session and we can get into more of these topics. I also want to say, everyone, Haley joined us today and asked me questions. I'm more than happy to have more guests on to throw questions at me. So if you're interested, shoot us a message on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you are, and say, Colleen, I'd like to join in the future as a guest and ask Spencer questions, and we'd love to have you. Colleen, any other pre-submitted questions?
No, that was it for the moment.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Maud is asking here, is it possible that foods could lead a child to not want to poop? My daughter eats a lot of veggies, but when she eats a lot of cruciferous veggies, she will hold it in for days on end. She's not constipated. So, Maud, one of the things I've learned with time is that anything is possible. And even with high quality foods, even with the best supplements, you will find a child who is an outlier, who will have some kind of reaction to those foods. And by the way, I really want to applaud you for being so attentive that you would link cruciferous vegetables with this behavior. Because, when I coach parents' ability to observe connections between when their child eats something or does a specific activity and then symptoms and behaviors that come after is so important. I always urge parents to be as attentive as possible with their children with neurodevelopmental issues, and journal if needed. See if you can connect certain activities, foods, with specific behaviors. So, is it possible, Maud? Absolutely. If you're seeing it, it's possible, and probably it means that those foods have to be limited. Maybe see if they're limited, like you put it into a rotation. Maybe if you give it once every 4 days, for example, this is called a rotation diet. See what happens. Maybe once every 4 days, there won't be an issue. Maybe even once every 2 or 3 days will be okay. But if you reduce it like that and your child's still having these issues, you might have to eliminate it for some time. But good job on you for figuring that out. All right, let me see if there's anything else here. I think that's it. Colleen, any announcements you'd like to make before we sign off for the day?
Yes. So we are, as always, scheduling appointments, both at our offices in just outside Philadelphia, also for July in Italy. I know that right now we have a couple of live appointments available in the next couple of months here in Philadelphia, but we're doing remote appointments all the time as well. So for those of you who don't know that we do remote appointments, it is a very effective way to get started. Now, ideally, we see kids in person. We all love that. We prefer it if it's possible, but we also know that it's not possible for everyone for a variety of reasons. Um, and we've been doing the remote appointments for a good long time now. So we've really honed them in. It ends up being a very successful experience for our families. I mean, I think, Spencer, there are some families, um, maybe not anymore because we go to Australia and New Zealand, but I think there were some families for a time who were just marching through the program, hitting milestones, achieving victories, and we had never seen them in person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. So again, it's our ideal to see your kid in front of us, to meet you. But if that's not a possibility for you, please don't be shy to get in touch, because remote appointments are a very viable option.
Yeah, and Colleen, I mean, the next live appointment in Philadelphia, it's not available until, is it July 7th?
July
Like
7th.
when's
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to come to Philadelphia, we're now booking 3 months out in advance. We're trying to reduce that. We're really trying to get it down so parents don't have to wait more than 6 weeks, let's say, for an appointment. But every time we make more appointments available, they fill up, and so we're kind of trying to keep up. But there are remote appointments available earlier than that, and so I think, Colleen, that's why Colleen's telling you all about that, because it's an important thing to keep in mind. If you can't travel, you might be able to get a visit earlier.
Yeah, that's my announcement. Or if you'd like to join us in Italy in July, that's when I was there last year. It was absolutely beautiful, and such you get to see the full team. It's not like sometimes families will ask me, well, who do I see if it's not in Philadelphia? I said, no, you see our full team. Our team travels. It's not,
Yeah.
like two random people who are
Yeah, that you've never heard of before. Yeah.
right.
All right. Well, Colleen, thank you so much for joining. Haley, thanks so much for joining as well. It was a great session. And like I said, if any of you want to join in the future to ask me questions, or maybe I could bring on another member of the staff. If you had questions about a specific area of development, in advance, I might be able to bring someone in to talk about it. Please message us and we can make arrangements.
Terrific.
Great. Colleen, can you see Iman's comment from Facebook? I just want to bring your attention to that. Just about she's interested in an Italy appointment.
Oh yeah, definitely. Iman and I have been in touch before. So Iman, I'll get in touch with you and we'll talk about Italy.
All right. Thanks everyone. Have a really good rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.